Hi, welcome to episode 243 of The Corner of Knit and Tea. My name's Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy K on Ravelry, Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Twitter. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where this episode and every episode show notes will be. We have a Ravelry group called The Corner of Knit and Tea, and I have an Etsy shop where I sell my hand-spun yarn and creations. That's also called The Corner of Knit and Tea. And I totally just screwed up the order there, and about halfway through had to think about what I was saying. So, hi, how are you? It is Monday, August 27th, and we are rapidly hitting the end of August. Everyone has gone back to school here, and for the last week or so, it has been crazy rainy here. This morning I sat down at my desk and about 10 o'clock it got so dark that I had to turn all the lights on in the room. And then about 5 minutes later I jumped really high out of my chair when there was an absolutely huge clap of thunder, like what sounded like right above our house. And then the sky got even darker, if that was possible, and it just completely poured and stormed. So the temperatures are not actually that cold. It's still like in the 70s, and super humid. So it's not like cold rainy, but it is rainy and dark, and it has been for the last several days. And, sorry, I think I have an eyelash in my eye or something. So it is kind of getting towards fall weather. I mean, it's still super warm here, but, yeah. So I'm starting to think about fall. I have actually, I finished this weekend all of my August project deadlines, which sort of gives me this extra week to play, because, well, not play, I'm working on the next things that I need to do, but I finished everything that I needed to in August ahead of August finishing, so I'm super thrilled about that. So I have knits to talk to you about, I have spins to talk to you about. This upcoming weekend is the Labor Day weekend here in the United States, which means we'll have Monday off. I will probably still podcast on Monday, but I'm looking forward to a weekend of hanging with family and friends and crafting, and then actually the following weekend my parents will be in town. So lots of things coming up and goings on and whatnot. I hope that you have had a wonderful week since I've seen you. And thanks for joining me today. If this is your first time, I mostly talk about my knits and spins, and so let's get started. The first thing I always talk about, of course, is the tea. Today I am drinking Midnight Melange Black Tea, which is a black tea with hibiscus, lemon peel, rose hips, and vanilla essence. This is from Plum Deluxe, and Plum Deluxe is a tea company that does a Tea of the Month club. So if you are interested in receiving some teas of the month, you can sign up and they will send you a tea each month. I am drinking this today in my Hoops and Yo-Yo mug, which are my favorite Hallmark characters, and they're so fun. Anyway, so that is what I'm drinking today. Neither the mug nor the tea are new, but the tea is delicious, and I have a big box of tea samples, and some of them are older than they should be. I know I shouldn't still use tea. I should use tea when it's fresh, use it up in the first couple months. But for a while there, I was ordering so much. I just have huge boxes. I have 2 big boxes of tea, and so I just go pawing through there and see what appeals every time it's time to drink a cup of tea. So that is what I've got going on there. And like I said, even though it's not super cold out, the afternoon just makes me want to get all cozy. So let's talk about the knits. I actually have a finished knit for you. Yay! I'm super excited. This is a new pattern, which I will be releasing in a couple of weeks. My goal is September 15th. And I knit this shawl using, it is a shawl, and I knit this shawl using Manos del Uruguay Alma, which is a new yarn from them. It is a superwash merino, very light fingering weight, sort of bordering on lace weight singles. It is 546 meters per 100 gram ball. I used 2 colorways. One is Inspiration and one is Mercy, and they generously sent me this yarn for review. So first I will talk about the yarn. The yarn itself is really beautiful. It is super, super soft. When I first got it, I sort of mentally, visually compared it to other singles that I have used, like Madeline Tosh Merino Light, and some of the other singles that other dyers use. And it is a little thinner than that. And I was a little concerned that it wouldn't hold up to much ripping, which was only really a concern for me because I was doing a new design and I had a feeling I might rip a few times. And I did. The yarn actually held up really, really well. I only had to cut a few pieces away when I was pulling it out because they had just gotten a little bit tangled, and I was able to use almost all the yarn in my shawl with no trouble at all. There were a few sections that were a little fuzzier than others, but I'm okay with that. I think it just adds to the beautiful nature of the yarn. And I love soft fingering weight singles. I know a lot of people don't like knitting with them, but I really like knitting with them. The yardage in these skeins was incredible. It let me do a really nice sized shawl that's super wearable. So let's talk about the shawl. The shawl itself is a garter stitch crescent shawl, and you have seen this all bunched up on the needles, but you have not gotten to see it in its finished form. So I started with this kind of semicircle section in the dark orange, which is the Mercy, and then I did a bunch of short row sections that I'm calling wedges in the light color with a pinstripe of the dark color in between, and then the border itself is the dark color with a pinstripe of the light color. So it's really geometric. It is super long. It is way more than my wingspan. I think I cataloged it at 80 inches, and this is only very, very lightly blocked. I really like my garter stitch super squishy, so I did not do a huge amount of blocking to it. So, and I am a short person, but it is 80 inches. I've still got stuff on the ends here, so it is long. I anticipate it can be worn thusly, which of course doesn't show all the color blockiness of it, but it is a warm, cozy fall shawl. I am super excited about it. The pattern went to the tech editors this morning, and I am hoping to shoot some glamour shot photos this weekend or in the next week or two, and then the pattern will be releasing September 15th. It will be releasing with a client of mine, a company. It will be a sign up for their email list and get the pattern free, and that will be going on for 6 months. I'm going to give it to them for 6 months exclusively, and then it will be for sale in my Ravelry shop. So you can either pick up a copy for free by signing up for the mailing list. I will give you all the details when that is done, or you can wait a few more months and then it will be available for purchase. But that is, and as of yet, it doesn't have a name. I was thinking something about the sun, because to me it reminded me of like the sun and sun rays. It also reminded me kind of an orange and the sections of an orange. But then last night, someone pointed out to me that the way I did the short rows, which is a certain number of stitches, created a little bit of a jagged edge in the short row sections. So it creates this slightly jagged edge, and somebody suggested that it looked kind of like feathers. So I don't know what I'm going to call it yet. If you have any suggestions, you are welcome to make them here. If you select the winning, if you tickle my fancy and I choose your name, I will send you a free copy of the pattern. But that is sort of where I'm at right now. And like I said, I'm very excited to have it finished. Basically, I used between 85 and 87% of the balls. I know that's awfully specific, but I went ahead and weighed my leftovers. My goal was to reserve 10 to 15%, just because people knit at slightly different gauges, and I didn't want anyone to run out of yarn, particularly because these are extra yardage balls. Most fingering weight yarns come in at about 400 yards per 100 grams, and this comes in at 546 yards per 100 grams, and I didn't want anyone to run out before they finished the shawl. So unless your gauge vastly differs from mine, you should be fine, because there is a 10 to 15% margin built in there. So I have little bits left. I have slightly more of this one left than this one, but basically between 10 and 15% left, which was exactly my goal. So I'm super excited to have that done, and it is in motion to be published. So I'm very excited about it, and I hope you'll enjoy it. So that is my first finished object, and that's the only finished object for this episode. But so that, and I actually finished that sample that I had been talking about and sent that out at the end of last week. On Friday. So that means that my docket is done for August. So I went ahead and cast on for the next couple of projects that I'm going to be doing. The first is a shawl that I have actually knit before, and this time I am knitting a sample. The shawl is called Love You Baby. It is by Suzanne Summer, who is Sosu Knits, and I knit it probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, out of 3 skeins of Zen Yarn Garden fingering weight yarn. And when I knit it, it was for a review, but I wore it in the booth when I worked for Zen Yarn Garden at Stitches. And they asked if I would knit a sample for them for their booth. So I said sure, and they picked out some yarn. And the thing that I love about the pattern is, like I said, it is by Suzanne Summer, and it's called Love You Baby. It was originally designed for U-Knits in New Jersey, or Do You Knit in New Jersey, and it was designed to be in hedgehog fibers, but it can be in anything. And the fun thing about it is that it is a shawl full of textures. The first section is brioche. The second section is stripes. The third section is a seed stitch section that is worked kind of in short rows, so it's got little kind of wedges. And then the fourth section is also brioche. So it is a great opportunity to combine 3 skeins of yarn into a big squishy shawl. And I should have brought mine, but I didn't today. So you'll just have to see the start of this shawl. So I am working in 3 skeins of yarn by Zen Yarn Garden, and I have the tag here. So, this is the yarn, Zen Yarn Garden, and I am using 3 skeins of their yarn, and 2 of them are in the Serenity 20 base, which is their 70-20-10 Superwash Merino Cashmere Nylon, which is a fingering weight. It is gorgeous and it feels amazing. And then one of the balls is in their Superfine Fingering, which I also really like. That is a 90-10 Superwash Merino Nylon, and it is bouncy and squishy and super, super soft. It just doesn't have the cashmere in it. The colorways are are not actually named technically. What I have are what they call their Dye Pot Dabbler series. And that is when their dyers just kind of dabble in the dye pots. And I have, there are 3 different skeins, and they've all got the Dye Pot Dabbler skein, and then some of them have numbers down in the corner. So this is the Dye Pot Dabbler tag that's on them, and it's colors 37, 44, and D. So let me see if I can tell you the right ones. This right here is the skein of Superfine Fingering, and it has shades of turquoise and white and kind of a cherry pink and then a chocolate brown. And my eye was actually really drawn to this skein. This was one of the first skeins that I picked up when we were kind of putting together combinations of 3, so I was excited that they chose them. And I believe this is Kelly's Creatives, and it's marked D, but it actually looks like C on their website, so I think it's probably C. But that is my first skein. My second skein is this riot of color, which is red and pink and white. And there are actually, when I looked at it, I thought there were only 2 shades in it, but it seems like there are a million shades in it. When I show you, you'll be able to see that a little bit. And I believe this one is Dye Pot Dabbler's 37. So that's that bright one. And then the third skein is kind of a blues and greens. It's got teals and turquoise and kind of a cornflower bright blue. It's got a million shades in it, and that is all these really pretty blues, very water toned, and I believe that one is Dye Pot Dabbler's 44. But this one actually wasn't up on the website, so I'm pretty sure it's this one, but it looks like they may have sold out. So the way the shawl works is, like I said, you're working in combinations. You're working mostly 2 colors at any given time, but there's brioche and stripes, and so it's kind of interesting to see how the colors play. And I will tell you that I was not sure about these colors. Roxanne the dyer put them together, and as it turns out, I think they're going to be lovely. But of course, it's not exactly what I would have picked, although you can sort of see that like the pink echoes the pink and the blues echo the blue, and it's still kind of wild. I don't know if I would have put them all together, but I'm excited to see what they do. So I started the first section yesterday, and I didn't get super far in. Like I said, it's a 2-color brioche at the top, and so this is the front side, which is the first color, which is kind of the blue and chocolate and red, or cherry. And then you can see through to the other side because it's brioche, that you can see the pink and red on the other side. And this is the other side. So here is where I noted that you could see more than just a pink and a red. There's just so many shades and where things combine. And then you can also see the little bits of blue on the other side. So this is the very start of the shawl. I have not gotten very far in, but this was just an hour or two of, maybe an hour or so of work last night. And so I will continue working on this. Hopefully we'll have this done in the next week or two, probably 2, to send back to them, because like I said, this is a sample knit for them to use in their booth. And I do know that they are going to be at Stitches SoCal. So if you are in Southern California, Zen Yarn Garden will be there and you can choose from their gorgeous colorways. And this is just one of the many shawls. They have their own shawl patterns and kits, but I also take their stuff and use it for a variety of other things. So, and their yarns are super soft. They source their yarns in Italy. And they're just super soft and squishy, and I love them. They're great up against your neck. So this is going to be kind of a wild, colorful shawl, but I'll be working on this over the next few weeks, and I'm sure I'll have lots to share. So that is the project that I'm working on right now. The other thing that I cast on for this morning is I'm going to have a hat pattern coming out at the end of the month, and at the end of September. And this will also be with another company, but it will be a free pattern on their website and you won't have to sign up for anything. So I will share those details once I know more. I've actually written up most of the hat pattern. The only thing I haven't written up is the crown decreases because I'm not exactly sure how I want them to go. And I was inspired by Lion Brand's Hat Not Hate campaign, which is their campaign for anti-bullying. And they ask that people knit and crochet blue hats. And then what they do is for World Anti-Bullying Day, which is in October, they distribute the hats at schools across the nation that they work with. And I decided that I was going to design a hat sort of with that in mind. And so it was going to be a blue hat, and it was going to be a fairly unisex hat, knit with a skein of blue worsted weight yarn. And so that was kind of where I was heading with that. And I cast that on actually just about an hour ago and got a few rounds done. The yarn that I'm using is Treasure Goddess Yarns Treasured Warmth Worsted. And this is her Swimmin' with the Fishies colorway. It is 100% superwash merino wool. It is squishy and bouncy, and the colorway is absolutely gorgeous. This is Swimmin' with the Fishies. Because she is Treasure Goddess, she has all pirate themed yarns, so there's no ill intentions in there. That's just what she called this one. And I have so little done, it's probably almost not worth showing, but I am doing a 2x1 rib on the brim, and so I've got a little bit done. I do hope by the time I talk to you next week that this hat is done, because I need to finish up the pattern, get it quickly tech edited, take a few photos, and send it to the company so that it will be published towards the end of September. So it's really funny because and this is sort of neither here nor there. If you remember, if I talked about my goals for last year, I talked about how I wanted to publish, so last year I published 2 patterns, and this year I decided that my goal was to double that, to publish 4 patterns. Except that the first half of the year, I didn't feel very inspired to design. I think it was a lot of what has been going on in the crafting community, and also a lot of what has been going on in general. I just wasn't feeling the inspiration to design. I was taking more comfort in the projects that I was working on. And so it's funny because then I had some people ask if I would design some things. So now I have 2 patterns coming out in September. And so I haven't decided if I'm going to make my 4 patterns for the year because I don't know if I have more patterns in me before the end of the year. But I am glad that I ended up doing some designing this year. But it just kind of amuses me because, like I said, my goal at the end of last year was I'm going to publish 4 patterns. I'm going to be really great about it. And then I kind of didn't have a lot of inspiration. And like I talked a little about last week, some of my inspiration comes from yarn, sometimes it comes from designs, so I'm not really a designer. I just kind of do a few things when when I'm motivated to. And for instance, for this hat, I just went through a whole bunch of stitch dictionaries that I had, and I pulled out a pattern that I thought was really nice and kind of unisex, and then I kind of swatched a little bit and just played to see what kind of sizes I wanted. And like I said, I still don't know exactly what I'm going to do on the crown decreases, so I basically can knit the brim and the hat, and then I have to think about what I want to do on the crown decreases. Currently, I'm designing this to be in 3 sizes, so it'll be an adult, small, medium, and large. That is because even though Hat Not Hate is for kids, I find that by the time kids are in elementary or middle school, their heads are usually pretty much close to adult sized. I mean, I'm not talking kindergartners, but you know, by the time you get to 5th, 6th, 7th grade, their heads are not going to grow that much more. So I feel like an adult small or an adult medium is probably fine for them. But then also I decided to offer an adult large so that, you know, anyone can knit this who wants to. And then you can always modify it to make it smaller or larger by working with larger or smaller yarn or needles. So for instance, this is in worsted weight. It's going to be on US 6s and 8s. You could knit it in fingering weight and go down a couple sizes to get a baby size. You could also knit it in an Aran or bulky weight and go up a needle size to get a slightly bigger hat. So yeah. So that is what I'm doing, and that will be a free pattern available to everyone. And like I said, I'm hoping to have it done knitting by next week, and then a couple weeks after it will be published and I can share with you. So those are the 2 things that I am working on this week. Also on my docket for this month is to try and start working on the kids' sweaters. My niece and nephew each turn to their next age at the end of October. Roxy will be 6 and Miles will be 3, and so I am working on sweaters for them. And as it turns out, I actually knit a sweater earlier in the year that I could give to Miles for his birthday. I hadn't decided yet whether that was going to be his birthday sweater or not, but I do not have one for Roxy, so I decided that's the first one I'm going to knit. So as soon as I get the hat kind of done, tested, or not tested, done, tech edited, put to bed, then the next thing that I will do is cast on Roxy's birthday sweater, and I will show you yarn for that next week, but that is coming up. So, sip of tea, and then let's talk about spinning, and then we'll be done. So, spinning. Last week I showed you some bats that I was working on. They were from Dripping Fiber Studios, which sadly is no longer. I believe the owner went back to school, and so she is not producing right now. But her bats were absolutely delightful. They were some deep stash because they were called Girl on Fire from Hunger Games, which I know was quite a few years ago when the movie came out and everything was kind of big into Hunger Games, and that's when I purchased them. And I spun them, and I am super pleased with the yarn. It is primarily reds and oranges, which is what you could see in the bats. It does have some hints of yellow because there was some yellow in there. And then every so often there is just a hint of, let's see if I can find a good spot to show you. Every so often there is kind of a hint of purple in there. I'm not sure if you can see that. I know it's kind of blowing out, but every so often there are bits and pieces of purple in there because there was kind of a light purple. I found like a couple spots earlier and now I cannot find them. Maybe some in here. So it's red and oranges and purple, and there is stellina in here, so it sparkles, but it is spun very well in with it, so it does not make the yarn rough, nor does it really stick out like some of the sparkles do. Angelina, I find, is really kind of light. And it was applied with a light touch, so there definitely is some sparkle to this yarn. I don't know if you can see it a little bit as I'm twisting it, but it is not like crazy, crazy sparkly. So my guess is this is probably between 3 and 350 yards of a probably close to DK or worsted weight. It was a bat, so it didn't spin completely smoothly because the fibers, they were mostly sort of layered in the same direction, but it doesn't spin like completely smoothly. But I am pretty pleased with it, and it is a beautiful set of fall colors, and this will be going up in the Etsy shop later this week. It is still a little bit wet, so I am waiting for it to dry. I just finished plying it yesterday morning, but I am super excited that it's done, and like I said, it'll be going up in the Etsy shop shortly, so if these are your colors, keep an eye on it. So yeah, that is, I don't know where that came from. I'll have to play with that in skinning it up later. So that is what's going on there. Since yesterday was Spinning Sunday, and I actually hosted it at my house, I pulled out another braid to spin. And I showed you this braid kind of recently. It is one that I got at TNNA. It is Oink Pigments, and I believe it is an 80/20 merino silk braid, but I can't remember, and the label is in the other room. Half of it is already on the wheel. It is in peach and coral and pink, and it reminds me very much of this year's Pantone colorway, Living Coral. It was dyed by Oink Pigments as a fundraiser for Planned Parenthood, and it is called Ovary Action. So OVARY Action, and I think it's hysterical. I love it. I'm going to spin it up. I haven't decided whether I'm going to keep it or put it in the shop. If one of you decides you need this, then I could probably be persuaded to put it in the shop, but it just reminds me of a peach, really, because it's like pink and peach and really pale. It's got light and dark parts, and it's just beautiful. I'm not sure that the monitor is getting it. The light here is kind of hideous today. I turned on a light because it is so dark and gross outside, but it's not a great it's more for like still photos, so it's not a great camera light, so I apologize if the lighting is not great today. So this is what I plan to finish this week, and then I have no idea what's up next. One of the ladies who came to Spinning Sunday yesterday brought a whole bunch of Rologs that she had made on her new blending board. So I have a bunch of those because she brought a whole bucket full of them and was like, I don't want these. I've made so many of them. Everybody take them. So I have some purple, some light and dark purple from her, and those have a little bit of Angelina too. And I'm thinking it might be, so I generally am not a very technical spinner. I am mostly self-taught, and I kind of do what works for me. In general, I don't plan my spins, and I don't plan what kind of yarn they're going to make. And my preferred method of spinning is with combed top, because it's all combed in the same direction and it's nice and smooth, and I can use sort of a short forward draw, which is how I mostly spin. But there are a lot of different ways to spin, and one of the things that I have talked about, I'm sure I've talked about it before, is the difference between worsted and woolen yarns. And worsted yarns are denser yarns, and they are generally achieved by spinning combed top and using a short forward draw. So that is primarily the yarns that I produce. However, yarns that are loftier, that are worsted spun, have a lot of air in them, and those are generally produced by spinning fibers that have a ton of air in them that are not compacted. Sometimes they are produced by fibers that are not all combed going the same direction. So for instance, a lot of bats, a lot of Rologs, they are spun they are spun woolen, not worsted, and I'm confusing this. I spin mostly worsted. I have never really spun woolen. I've never really tried it. One of the things that I know is, one of the techniques that I know to spin woolen is to spin long draw. And I have not really played with long draw, but Rologs lend themselves to it. And because this was some free fiber from a friend, I thought I might try and watch a few videos and try a little bit of woolen spinning. So that will be something for a future discussion that I might do, but I'll have to think about that because I have a few other braids I would love to get on the wheel. So I think that's it for today. Thank you for joining me as always. I hope that you have a lovely, crafty week ahead, and until I see you again, I will say, as I always do, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye.